Welcome to Digital Toolbox. In this video we're going to go over the material editor and rendering in 3ds Max. This is 3ds Max 2011, so a little bit new, but the things we'll be going over are just the same as a few of the more recent versions. So the material editor can be found on the fourth one in from the right up here. Those first three are those rendering buttons. So click on material editor or just type in M. The first thing that comes up in 2011 is the Slate material editor, but that's a new version of material editor. It's not what we're going to be using, so we'll go to compact material editor under modes. And this compact material editor will look familiar from the past versions. The first kind of key here is the palette of different materials. These are all the materials you're going to be using in your scene, creating and generating your own materials. They'll all show up right here under the material editor. You can see different ones all at once, and you can have up to 24 if you scroll down and around. You can have more than that in your scene. Just create it, add it to your scene, and then kind of reuse your space in your palette for different ones. You can view the materials in different ways here too. So I'll have this top gray material selected, and then over here on the right, these buttons are to view them in different ways. So sample type, if I click and drag out, I can get a cylinder or a cube, and you can also hold down the middle mouse button and see different ways how it's reacting with the light. The sphere is probably the most generic and most useful, but if you have a specific scenario, you can check out something else. Backlight is an option if you have direct light from one side or different things interacting. You can check that out. The background, you can switch between gray and this kind of checkered background to see those fine lines. There's also sample UV tiling, check out different tiling. So a few different ways of viewing the material. That UV tiling is good for maps, things like that. So over here on the right, these are all different ways of viewing those. Just below the palette are different ways of getting materials, putting materials, resetting them, how more administrative tasks about how they're dealt with in a library and in your scene. But then below that is the name of the material and then a whole lot of info on the material properties. So you can see here the gray one's called gray mullions material. The white one is called white material. I've renamed those, so you can see this black one, the third one in, isn't one that I made or edited. It's called 03 default. Very generic and kind of stupid material name. If you're going to go ahead and use 03 default, you like that black one, then just go ahead and rename it so you know if it pops up in another dialog box or somewhere along the way, you'll know that it's not just 03 something else. So just go ahead and say asphalt material or something like that. You can just type that in there, and then that way you know what it is. So this maroon one down here is something I edited. You can copy, say if you like these properties, you can just drag and drop over another one, and then it'll duplicate those properties. So in case you want two ones that look the same, but you just tweak a few options, it's just kind of the same thing of copying or duplicating an instance in 3ds. So for the most part, that's the material editor. We'll get into the material details, and down here everything below this, below in the dialog box per specific materials in another video. So the last thing we'll do is just to get material out of the material editor into the scene. So these kind of black roofs and slab, the roof and slabs that are black right now, it's obviously not what we want. So I'll click on one and it'll select this entire thing. I want the white material for this, so I'll click it and drag it over here to slab 1, it'll do object or selection. So if I do object, say OK, it'll just do that one object that I dragged it onto. If I click and drag to another one and say selection, it'll go ahead and do that whole group. So that's basically how you get materials out of the material editor and drag them onto the scene.